Kei Hea Ngā Tuna o te pā whakatipu. Ruru ana, kohunui Pirinoa. Tu ana tau ana e. He heke tuna, he heke rangatira. Re re ana, ono ke Wairarapa mo ana. Tu ana tau ana e. Tu ana tau ana e. Ko taki timu te waka, ko aorangi te pai maunga, ko ruamahanga, ko tauanui, ko tūranga nui nā awa, ko Wairarapa te moana, te karu o te ika, ko onoke te roto, ko Kohunui te Marae. Our waiata, Kei Hea Ngā Tuna, where are the tuna? We're not just talking about the tuna, we're talking about our whānau. Where are our whānau? We want you home. The song, the waiata, was composed by a group of 4 people. Myself, Victor Te Māori, Eruha Te Whaiti, and Francis McNally Te Māori. We wanted 4 words to write a waiata from, and each one of us gave a word. One of those words was tuna. Another word was Kohunui Pirinoa. Another phrase was pā whakatipu, the pā that you grow up in, pā tuna, Kohunui Pā. And the last word was ruru. Those 4 words were important to the 4 of us, and from those 4 words came the waiata, Kei Hea Ngā Tuna. When we look at this tukutuku panel, we see something that any member of the public will be able to see if they take a journey to the lighthouse, to Mātakitaki. And what it represents relates to Kupe. When Kupe first came to Aotearoa, he had a companion ngake along with his family, and they were actually trying to hunt down the wheke, the giant octopus that had been eating all of the kai around their village, te wheke a Muturangi. When they arrived at Cape Palliser, they needed to repair their sails, and the legend goes that ngake and kupe had a competition to see who could make the best and sail the fastest. And when ngake awoke in the morning, here was kupe's sail hanging on the mountain, and we still see kupe's sail today. Ngā rā a kupe we refer to, so the sails of kupe. When I talked about mātakitaki, that refers to te mātakitaki a kupe, the watching place of kupe, who stood at a particular place and looked out through a hole in the rock toward the South Island where his daughter travelled, and he was looking to Kaikoura through that hole in the rock, awaiting her return. I've also heard that he would light a fire behind that rock to provide a circular light for his daughter, so that upon her return, if it was dark, she would be able to see where she was to come to. A literal interpretation of this tukutuku panel would see us looking at a tui and a kōwhai tree, which it is exactly that, but It also has a deeper meaning. Metaphorically, the tui represents the people of Kohunui Marae. The kōwhai tree, as we all know, is a tree that flowers in springtime. So springtime was the time when the people of Kohunui would be on the move. Springtime indicates a time of floods. It indicates it's the time to go and catch flounder from the lake, to catch whitebait from the lake. It's also a time it is signalled for us to go out to the coast, because at that time, when the kōwhai are flowering, the kina are fat, and the karingo is ready to be harvested from the rocks. So, along the Whangaehu stream, which goes behind the marae, there used to be kōwhai trees, and we read those signs, and that indication was for us to go and move to the coast to do the harvesting of the kaimoana and to Lake Onoke for kai for our whānau. Other people also like to say that apparently the people of Kohunui are songbirds, so another representation of the whānau of Kohunui by the tui. When we look at the fishing hook here, it tells a story of people who lived by fishing. Other people look at this hook and it reminds us of Te Ika a Maui and Maui's hook, which raised up Te Ika a Maui, the North Island. And so, of course, we have here Te Matau a Maui, Maui's hook. It also reminds us of a special fishing rock at Mātakitaki, where the fishermen would go, obviously, to catch the fish for the whānau, but on this fishing rock, the formations allowed for that fish to be caught and popped into a little pond in the fishing rock, and for the fish to be cleansed on that rock as well. They say that only those who were very skilled ventured onto the rock. And it was made more sacred by the fact that we have tipuna who were buried close to that rock at Mātakitaki. The diamond shapes indicated in the tukutuku panel we're looking at now are referred to within Māori art forms as the pātiki, which of course to the people of Kohunui and our relationship with the waters refers to the flounder that we accessed as kai for our whānau. In springtime, of course, we'd go down to Onoke and the flounder were abundant. And a sign from the stars is that the pātiki also refers to a dark formation in the stars close to the Milky Way and close to the Southern Cross, and it's referred to as Te Pātiki. Or in other cultures, and they refer to it as the coal sack, and it's close to Orion's belt. But when that formation was seen clear in the sky, then we knew that the catch of pātiki or flounder that season was going to be abundant. A pictorialisation of kaimoana that is important to us at Kohunui would be incomplete if we didn't have a tukutuku panel of the koura, highly prized kai that our whānau love to be able to share with manuhiri when they come, and highly abundant in the past, and we just hope that that abundance will continue into the future. When we see the kereru in the miro tree, it's the height of summer and it's time for the Kohunui whānau to come back home. The potatoes are ready to be harvested, the kumara are just about ready, the kamokamo is sweet, the kina has lost its flavour, and of course the kereru are fat. The seasons are dictating where we will be at what times. And just as importantly, if not more importantly, it's time to get ready for the eel harvesting. What a wonderful annual event that was for our whānau, for our whānau, a true event of whanaungatanga. Everyone came together. The eel season ran from January till about May. The spit at Onoke would have already closed due to the southern winds pushing the shingle up and closing the spit, so that Lake Onoke was filling with the waters from the Ruamahanga and from Wairarapa Moana. The hao was the first of the tuna to migrate. The hao, when it was cooked whole. The bones were soft, the flesh was sweet. The next eel to come through the migration, the heke tuna, was the riko, bigger than the hao, and the bone was removed. The largest eel, the Pirinoa, was the later one of the tuna to migrate. Their migration naturally meant that they wanted to come back from the streams they'd been up, from the lakes they'd been in, to exit through the spit and to return to the Tongan Trench, which is where they would spawn. They would make their way down to Onoke and they had no way to get out, unless they were that determined that they would actually come out of the water and go across the spit and out into Palliser Bay. That was before the coming of the settlers. When the settlers arrived, they came with sheep. We think of it as a battle between the hippie and the tuna. What was more important? Well, we know what was more important to us was our tuna. We had done that for centuries. Every year we had harvested our tuna. We had preserved some for the winter months. We had traded with other iwi in the South Island, Kaikoura. Up in the North Island we traded our tuna. Except when these hippie arrived and the farmers that came with these hippie, what did they want? Did they want a lake full and rich with kai? No, they wanted pasture, dry with grass on it, so their hippie could feed on the pastures. And that started a battle which went for nearly 40 years. The farmers wanting that spit to open, to release the water so that they would have pasture available, and we as Māori wanted to maintain our tino rangatiratanga over our fisheries, our taonga. And we battled to say, you are not living up to your promises of the treaty. The farmers' pressure was too much for us, ultimately, and we signed away and gifted the lake, a tuku rangatira, to the Crown, and the farmers won that battle. All of those areas around Kohunui that used to be repo, that used to hold tuna in amongst the harakeke that was in the repo, and other plant life, other bird life, all of that has disappeared now. And we have, if we look at our windows now at Kohunui, we see grass. That's as far as the eye can see. The Pūtagirua Pinnacles are in their own right a tourist attraction. Many people come to the South Wairarapa coast and walk up the stream to view the pinnacles. White rock that is depicted here on the tukutuku panels. But metaphorically, our weavers who wove these tukutuku panels also compared the pinnacles being a structure that faces the storms, faces whatever the weather throws at them, and yet they're still standing. And so our weavers metaphorically see this as a lesson for our rangatahi, not just for the rangatahi either, but for our rangatahi to be able to express to them the need to be able to stand up to those challenges that we face in our lives, and that they can remain standing and be strong and still continue, and regardless of the challenges that come their way. So a lesson for our rangatahi, kia kaha. The tukutuku panel depicts the lighthouse that was built at Mātakitaki. The lighthouse was actually built on family land, and when the lighthouse was automated, the land was returned to the whānau, and they are known as the Mātakitaki blocks. Our weavers had a deeper sense about this tukutuku panel, as they have with all of them. In their minds at the time, the lighthouse was a warning to watch out for impending danger, to be able to see that impending danger, just as a tribal canoe, a waka, needs to have that warning. It brings to mind the fact that our waka will only survive with its people. We need our people to keep our hapu waka alive and moving forward into the future. The lake, our most precious taonga, and of course it holds much, much more significance to us than any tukutuku panel on its own could ever do. We've also shown surrounding the lake the fact that we did actually manage to build some positive relationships with the early settlers, and so the Scottish families who settled in South Wairarapa around Kohunui and around the lake, their tartans are shown on that tukutuku panel, and also the fact that that lake is used for recreational purposes. But we all know the big story for us, for our lake, is our tuna. I've heard two stories about this mural. One of them is the fact that it depicts how we welcomed settlers when they first came to the South Wairarapa coast. In actual fact, we were quite happy to receive the settlers in the first instance because they wanted to lease our land, so we were the lessor and the settlers were the lessees of our land, until the government decided to call them squatters because they were doing that, and insisted that the land be sold to the government. The other story that I've heard about this mural is the fact that the sailing ship is either the Endeavour or the Resolution. At the time when Captain Cook came to Aotearoa, he didn't set foot here in South Wairarapa, but the story was told that we had heard about the whāo and what a wonderful thing it was. I'm referring to a nail. So Captain Cook had gifted these nails to our other iwi, other hapus throughout Aotearoa, and so the story goes that when he came around and into Cook Strait, Te moana o rau kawakawa. When he came around into the strait, our people went out to meet him because they wanted to get some of these whāo. The mural behind me, as you can see, is entitled Kohunui. Doesn't look like Kohunui, does it? But in years gone by, if I was to stand at the other end of our whare and look out the window, that is what I would have seen. That is why this mural is here, to remind us of what things used to be like. The repo was there across the road, and at the time of the Tuhirangi, when the waters would swell, so too then would the repo be swollen with more water. It provided a wonderful habitat for the tuna and for other fish species, and it also provided, of course, the toi, the raupo, tikoka, all those other plants, all those flora that we don't see out there now. All I see out there now is grass, pasture. It also provided a wonderful habitat for the birds. So we had geese, swans, ducks, which in themselves provided some kai, but also their eggs were there and able to be got for the whānau of Kohunui Pā. In the top left-hand corner we see a kōtuku. The kōtuku these days is often referred to as he mea reringatahi, he kōtuku reringatahi, hardly ever seen, and that's what it's like now. But in those days, kōtuku were often seen around Kohunui. And behind me in the right-hand corner at the top is the kaitiaki of one of the whānau of Kohunui Marae, the Te Māori whānau. The ruru, seen as our kaitiaki, gave us a warning, gave us the messages of impending death or illness for members of our whānau. But it wasn't by way of the ru, the sound that we would normally hear that a ruru makes. Instead, it was a screech, which immediately alerted the whānau as to what that message was about. Kohunui the way it was. He heke tuna, he heke rangatira, re re ana, ono ke Wairarapa mo ana. Tu ana tau ana e. Tu ana tau ana e.